Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing FASTR BMW M4 Sunday League Season 20. It is the grand final. It is round number 10, and we're here on Australia at the Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit, but you can call it in short Bathurst, the circuit that takes all. And we have got a cracking finale ahead. We've got some questions that have already been answered, but one huge question that is still to be answered. Who is going to be the winner of Division 1? Will it be Matthew Lambert or will it be Martin JL09? We'll find out over the course of tonight's two races. Now, I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And we are taking a look at the Alien League and Division 1, of course. There is also a separate racing group at the moment for Division 2. That will be broadcast by a member of the NXTGEN Racing team after the races have occurred. We do not have a live commentator, as far as I'm aware, for the Division 2 group, but be sure to check out the NXTGEN Racing Facebook page for details on where you can check out the racing from Division 2. But we're focusing on Alien League and Division 1, or the top split, and really it's good to be back. It's been a 2-week break due to the fact we had a bank holiday weekend last weekend, which meant the vast majority of drivers were unable to take part due to personal commitments and family commitments. Our drivers all do have families at the end of the day, and they love to see them and spend time with them. But without further ado, we digress. Let's get to the circuit then and tell you the story so far and what we've got to expect tonight. Now, of course, we always start off by talking about our Alien League drivers as we look to display our race information and also make sure that we're able to use our keyboard. Now, starting off with the Alien League, we're going to expect that the Alien League may be a little bit sparse compared to what we have previously seen, as going into, and I believe as the conclusion of round 9, it was looking extremely likely, but Sparks Theory, the leader of the Alien League going into round 9, wrapped things up last time out with a very strong set of results, back-to-back wins at Fuji. And as a result, Sparks is the champion for the Alien League by a considerable margin. Currently stood on 363 points, his closest contender being MMR Luke Mitchell. But really, Sparks won the championship going into round number 9. It was all said and done and wrapped up, so he's the deserved winner there. And Sparks tonight will be looking to end on a high, albeit he can afford to finish right at the back if he wanted to, or simply park the car in the pits, and it would make no difference. But Sparks, being Sparks, he'll be looking to do his utmost in order to finish on the ultimate high. As we say hello to Zoronic in the chat, and to anybody else who is tuning in right now. If you are watching on Twitch, do not be afraid to say hi. Well, don't be shy. We're all here to be friendly and to enjoy some cracking racing ahead. Now, our second place man in the Alien League is Luke Mitchell, MMR Luke Mitchell, who you can see making his way right now down towards the Dipper. Well, in fact, he's going down to Forest Elbow. He's gone past the Dipper already as we get ourselves orientated with the Australian circuit. And Luke Mitchell, having picked up the second place with the absence of TNR Philo, he's really been the closest contender to Sparks with the absence of Philo. And it's been great to see Luke evolve into the series over the course of 9 rounds. And really, with this final round tonight, he'll be looking to take the fight to Sparks. But of course, he won't be able to take the championship title off of Sparks, but he'd love to take a win off of him after a strong showing last time out. But still, we'll wait and see what the British driver is able to do and whether he's able to one-up Sparks over the course of tonight's proceedings. As for the rest of the Alien League, well, in third place at the moment is TNR Philo, and I should point out that Luke Mitchell is safe in P2. He cannot be caught in P2 with 262 points to his name versus Philo's 199. We do not have Philo, nor do we have GTP Rick Wicks or WRX in full, who is currently in P4, having had to retire from the series due to personal circumstances, and we wish him well, and we wish Philo as well. And we've also got Luke Doherty, 94, who has had to withdraw from the series due to personal commitments. So we've only got 2 of our 5 Alien League drivers remaining, and that's the story really. That's how they're going to finish. Sparks as the champion, Luke Mitchell as our second place man, Philo in third, Rick in P4, and Luke Doherty in P5. Now, as for Division 1, this is where the big story is tonight, and this is where it can all kick off and it can all change. Right now, this man right here, Matthew Lambert, is currently the championship leader in Division 1. He is currently sat on 311 points with a good set of results at Fuji, albeit not everything went his way, and in fact he lost ground in terms of his advantage to his main rival, Martin JL09, with Martin getting the better results out of the pair of them in both races at the Japanese circuit. Now, Matthew Lambert, with that 311 points versus Martin's 285, he does effectively have what is, if we do some quick mental maths here, a 26-point advantage. Now, that means Matthew Lambert just needs to finish 1 place behind Martin and he'll be absolutely fine. But of course, Lambert would love to finish ahead of Martin to essentially take away the ability for Martin to close the gap. Martin, meanwhile, in P2 in our Division 1 and making his way into Turn 1 right now. The British driver, most of our drivers here being from the United Kingdom, really has come alive, although it's been a little bit inconsistent in terms of Martin's performances. Lambert has really been the story of the season in Division 1, but Martin has been there, and when he's been on form, he's been the closest contender to Lambert, and he's going from a position right now where he's got the momentum on his side going into tonight's round. As previously said, he had the better of the results out of the two of them going around Fuji, but of course now at the Australian circuit, it's a different story altogether. We've gone from a power circuit to a circuit which is a bit about power but also about consistent handling, particularly through sectors 2 and 3 as they're going up and down the mountain. So Martin tonight needs wins, and he needs Matthew Lambert to drop points. Lambert cannot afford to finish deep down in the Division 1 order, but if he finishes just one place behind Martin, then he'll have it all said and done come the end of tonight's races. Meanwhile, in P3, we have Sir Bertus, who's currently not at the circuit. I believe he may be arriving in short order, albeit he wasn't able to take part last time out. And on 193 points at the moment, he's not in contention for the championship win in Division 1, as we see Martin there going wide at McPhillamy. But what I can tell you, Sir Bertus is in P3 and really the one who is most vulnerable to being usurped for P3 in Division 1 come the end of tonight. Now, we don't have Decast at the circuit. Decast is currently in P4. I believe he may be joining a bit later, just before we get underway. Decast being on 179 points, having had a difficult run of form at the Japanese circuit last time out and really losing the potential valuable points to him. And Skyver is the one who was able to benefit from that, as we see the British driver making his way down the Conrad straight and towards the chase. Currently sat on 178 points, as we see that his main rival for P4 and P3, Decast, has just joined the lobby and will be out in the paddock in short order. Skyver on 178 points, only 1 point off of Decast, and then a further 25 points off of our third place man Sir Bertus. And of course both of them would love not to see Sir Bertus here tonight, because if so, that gives them a better opportunity to usurp the position of Sir Bertus for P3. But really, Skyver and Decast battling for that P4 position and looking to try and creep into the mix for P3 in Division 1 come the end of tonight. Outside of that, we have Naif. Now, the Naif, of course, many of you will know, joined us midway through the season, the British driver making his way down towards Turn 1 in the Red Bull Racing livery, and we should also quickly say that Skyver there featuring a wonderful and McLaren-orientated livery, if I remember my colours correctly. But Skyver Naif at 1981 on 171 points. He could also be within an outsider's chance of picking up P3 or definitely getting P4 off of Decast and Skyver tonight. But we'll have to wait and see, of course, what he's able to achieve. Having really come alive, albeit Fuji was a very difficult one for Naif, as we see he makes his way into the wall there at Turn 2, going a little bit too late on the brakes and experiencing some understeer. But Naif is looking to end the season on a high. The one who's got the biggest point to show is Naif right now. Having joined midway through the season, he'll feel that he wants to achieve everything he can come the end of tonight's standings and prove to everybody, yes, he joined late, but he was still very competitive, and if he'd run the whole season, perhaps he would have been at the top, or at least in P3 in Division 1. He's got an 11-point advantage over Edge HJG. Edge currently not in the lobby, and I'm not 100% sure if Edge will be joining us tonight. We'll wait and see, of course. And Edge on 160 points with a 14-point advantage over Gino Demmer. Gino from the United Kingdom, he will be our trackside steward and lobby host in the Hispania Racing F1 team, representing them for the last time this evening. And indeed, Gino, having had a very difficult run of form over the course of the season, a lot of inconsistency in finding himself towards the back, but he's going to try his best. And I think going into tonight, he was telling me earlier on that he wasn't feeling too confident. This isn't a circuit that really suits him, and indeed Bathurst is a circuit which can intimidate anyone, but he's going to just give it his best and see what he can achieve come the end of tonight's two races. Now, with those 146 points, he does have a 20-point advantage over D10 Piper, and I believe it is the case that if D10 Piper is going to join us, it will be midway through the proceedings. So I think Gino's going to be quite safe from D10 Piper, who is at the bottom of our standings in Division 1 on 126 points, but we'll wait and see. Can Gino potentially jump Edge come the end of tonight, or will it be the case that Gino is kept in P8 in Division 1? But that is something for us to find out as we say hello to Budweiser 1977, who's wishing Martin JL09 the best of luck. And indeed, it is a good big question. Can Martin bring it home and bring home the win overall in Division 1? As I say, he's got to win both races, and on top of that as well, expect Matthew Lambert to drop points if he's going to be able to do it, because Lambert just needs to finish behind him, directly behind him in each race to guarantee it effectively. And in fact, he can drop a couple more points than that. Now, outside of that, of course, let's talk a little bit about the circuit then and our combination. Well, we see Sir Bertus has also arrived, and in fact, we should introduce DCAST very quickly. My apologies, we should introduce our drivers who do arrive a little bit later than the general crowd, and we can see DCAST, the British driver, making his way out of the pits right now on cue. And in that fourth place at 179 points, I reckon he would love tonight to be able to hold on to that P4 in the Division 1 standings and potentially take the fight to Sir Bertus and put Sir Bertus under pressure. But of course, there is a gap between DCAST and Sir Bertus of 14 points, and that is quite a gap to overhaul, and it would require Sir Bertus to drop points by finishing towards the back, whereas DCAST would have to finish towards the front. And I believe Sir Bertus will be coming out into the paddock any moment now. He's just clearing the traffic at the entry gate, and he will be out on the circuit in short order. So we are expecting approximately 9 to 10 drivers tonight, as we are just quickly checking in to see if we've got any further information down at the paddock with regards to what's happening. We haven't had any further word right now. I believe Martin is just getting himself set up, Martin Jallo 9, or perhaps feeling that this circuit is going to be a little bit of a difficult one for him, but we will wait and see what he is able to achieve, of course, as I believe Sir Bertus is still getting into the paddock. So in the meantime, let's take a guided lap around the circuit. Let's find one of our drivers to take us around. And it's going to be Luke Mitchell who's going to give us a tour of the Australian circuit. Consisting of 23 corners, we ride on board with the British driver as he makes his way into turn 23. Now, think about Bathurst. This is a circuit where there's only really 2 major overtaking sectors, and then there's 2 sectors where you just have to follow in sequence. But he goes across the timing line to complete a lap and start another one. Coming into turn 1 then, braking at approximately the 50-metre board there, coming all the way down through the gears and snap shifting down on the apex then to second before accelerating back up to third. Now you've got the long run up the straight here towards turn number 2. Now this is sector 1 effectively. Sector 1 concludes midway down the straight here, and for those wondering what's the name of the straight, this straight is known as the mountain straight because it leads up to the mountain with a little rise and then a dip and a further rise up before going into turn 2, known as Griffin's Bend. A very tricky corner because essentially it's an uphill right-hander, which means the car will have a tendency to drift upon turning, and you have to nail that apex curb. But making his way through up into turns 3 and 4, the left-hander of 3 followed by the very tight left-hander of 4. This is called the cutting because it essentially cuts away the overall overtaking opportunities. And now we go through turns 5 and 6, the double right-handers here as they make their way through a quarry corner. And now up into turn 7, the left-hander here where you have that blind apex effectively if you're riding from cockpit view. Now turns 8 and 9 loom ahead as he makes his way through the whole sequence of left-handers. Now up towards turn 10, known as McPhillamy here, and a very difficult corner. You don't want to use too much of the entry curve because it can launch the car in the air, and we can see that Mitchell just getting it together as he goes over Skyline and now down into the dipper, perhaps the most difficult sequence here as he goes into the dipper left-hander right now and then following the right-hander afterwards, and now coming up towards Forest Elbow, not the left, not the right, he's got to go through those corners, and now into Forest Elbow he goes, the left-hander here which determines what your speed is going onto the long straight. Down the Conrod straight he goes, down towards the Chase. Now this is a long straight, perhaps the longest straight on the circuit by a significant margin, and this is where we expect to see the majority of the overtaking action as he makes his way up into 7th gear very shortly, going up the small ascent right now, coming to the end of sector 3, and now he's got the long run into the Chase chicane as he's going to go through the right-hander at turn 20, and then it's turns 21 and 22 that loom. You can see them up ahead, and he's coming into that braking zone from 162 miles an hour, coming down through the gears in that M4 and making his way across turn 21, just a little bit wide of apex there before turn 22, now catching up to the rear Sparks, who's going to move over to the left-hand side, coming into turn 23, going into Murray's Corner, the final corner of the circuit, and that completes the lap as Luke Mitchell makes his way across the timeline. A nice smooth lap there, despite his little run-off at McPhillamy Park, but Luke Mitchell showing us how it's done around the Australian circuit, and we look forward to seeing what our Alien League driver is able to achieve tonight. As we see that in this final practice session with only 6 minutes to go, if that, we can see that Sparks Fury has currently set the provisional top time in the practice session of a 2:10.9 as Mitchell goes on his way. That previous lap there being a 2:11.7, so quite a close lap, and Matthew Lambert there only 6 tenths off of our Alien League champion, so it looks as though Lambert is looking quite strong here as we now look back to introduce Sir Bertus, the Dutchman, making his way down the Conrod straight here. Now, of course, the Dutchman, currently in P3 in the Division 1 standings, he doesn't need to do too much tonight in order to secure that P3 with those 193 points. He missed out on Fuji last week. He wasn't able to make the rounds in the Benson and Hedges Racing Mobile here, inspired, I believe, a little bit perhaps by Jordan, i.e. the Formula 1 team, as run by Eddie Jordan, of course, as he makes his way through the chase chicane. And you can see they're going a little bit wide then. That's what our drivers have to be wary of, running out onto turn 22's apex grass. But the Dutchman making his way down and just getting his feet in. Well, the fact we've only got 5 minutes to go now, and every second counts here in terms of practice. I can tell you myself, having raced around this circuit multiple times, and particularly not being a huge fan of this circuit initially, but now I'm a greater fan of it with more experience. This is one of those circuits where you really need to get your eye in and get your feeling on the brakes and the accelerator. You can't go into this circuit blind, because otherwise it is going to bite you on the backside like a very nasty tick, in the fact that this circuit takes no prisoners, particularly in Sector 3, where it's all downhill towards Forest Elbow and then the Conrad Straight. So we see Sir Bertus and Martin going side by side there, and we look forward to seeing what the Dutchman is able to achieve, and whether perhaps he can take a result from Martin, alternatively Matthew Lambert. Sir Bertus has been the strongest outside of the top two in Division 1. Now we're just checking in with race control once again, whether we've got any other information being sent our way. No, everything is looking good. Everybody is just getting set up right now and getting their final practice in, of course, and we're just taking a further look around. No word from anybody currently in terms of any last minute bits of information. I think all of our drivers are getting quite silent already. We normally hear a little bit of banter between our drivers using the Facebook chat, alternatively the GT Sport lobby chat going into the race. There's normally a bit of banter down in the paddock, but I think for a lot of our drivers here, they're more focused on just getting around the circuit and getting themselves warmed up for it. And of course, Sparks has been the pace setter every single race we've gone to, every single circuit we've gone to. He's really set the time, which everybody has then tried to mimic, and we look forward to seeing whether it is the case that Sparks is going to be the top dog once again, or whether somebody can pull a surprise, where it's Luke Mitchell and one of our Division 1 drivers, as we see Luke Mitchell makes his way back out onto the circuit, and he's making his way out towards turn 2 right now. Now, whilst we've got a couple of minutes remaining, just a quick word on our sponsor, FASTR. FASTR, or Be Faster as they're known in full, you can go to www.befaster.com, look them up on Google. They are a company dedicated to motorsport, whether it be in the real world, alternatively in the simulated virtual world, trying to expand the prospect of motorsport to all ages, whether it's youngsters, middle-aged people, or all the way up to retirees, trying to spread the word of motorsport and encourage more and more people to get into it, whether it's as supporters, alternatively careers. Motorsport is for everyone. It's a growing industry. It's been growing for the best part of the last 50 years, and especially in the last 20 years in particular, motorsport has really started to rise, not just in the real world, but also in terms of the sim world, and particularly with recent circumstances with the global lockdown and pandemic, we have seen that the sim world of motorsport has grown massively, and Be Faster wants to be at the head of that tip, or the head of that spear, in terms of being able to expand the horizons of motorsport. So be sure to check them out. They're our sponsor, and we're happy to have them on board for the final race of this season, season 20, of course. Now be sure to let me know in the chat as to who you are supporting if you haven't already. Now, for those wondering about the format, so at the hour, so when we get to 9 o'clock British Summer Time, or UTC +1, so in 2 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session. And then after that, it'll be a 10-minute qualifying session. We will then reset the grid to have our Alien League drivers start at the front and our Division 1 drivers start behind, based on their qualifying order, of course. And then once we get underway, race number 1 will be 10 minutes in length, and we're expecting approximately 5 laps. And then after race number 1, we will have the reverse grid race of race number 2, a further 10 minutes, and that will be the conclusion of tonight's proceedings. And we just had it confirmed to us in our right hand here by Sir Bertus. Now, with regards to his livery, it's actually based on a Benson and Hedges BMW E36 that has raced at both Bathurst and the British Touring Car Championship. Sir Bertus there using real-life inspiration for his livery, and it's great to see, of course, and making sure that we're fully aware of what he's based it on. Thank you for that, Sir Bertus. It's always great to see liveries being recreated in GT Sport, and indeed that is a smashing livery, and we wish you all the best luck. We wish you the best luck, of course, to all of our drivers, not just to Sir Bertus, but a little bit of extra Benson and Hedges good luck there to the Dutchman. But we do only have 1 minute to go now until qualifying, so we are hoping to get underway on time. I think everybody is set. We're just having our trackside steward, Gino just checking in with everyone and letting them know what's happening and making sure they're all aware of the fact we will be doing the qualifying session and then we will be aborting the race in order to reset the grid as per the rules and regulations to get underway for race number 1. Otherwise GT Sport would have us start with a mixed grid where we're separating the grid for the Alien League and Division 1, or the 2 splits within this top split, if you will. Now, things to watch out for, of course, in qualifying. Is slipstream going to be a big factor? I do think that some drivers will try to put themselves in a position whereby if they feel they're stronger coming out of Forest Elbow and then going down to the Conrod straight, they'll try and get somebody to give them a toe down Conrod into the chase. But of course, that's a huge gamble in the fact that when they follow somebody down into the chase, they'll have the overspeed at least 5-6 miles an hour. So they'll be coming into the braking zone approximately what we suspect will be 168 miles an hour, which is going to be very heavy on the front brakes as we're about to get underway with qualifying. 10 minutes. Who's going to be on pole? Let's find out. So we wait to see who's going to come charging out of the pits, and it looks as though it is Luke Mitchell who's going to be the first one to charge out of the pits. Also saying hello to us in the Twitch chat is the driver, and we say hello back to Luke Mitchell as he makes his way out onto the circuit, and we can also see that Martin Jallo9 immediately getting out there as well. Now, as we're saying, slipstream is going to be a significant factor in terms of qualifying. Drivers can benefit considerably from it, as we also say hello to Sparks Theory in the chat. Sparks, of course, or our Alien League champion, we should say, making his way out of the paddock. Probably last of our drivers, going to give himself a bit of space out on the circuit and perhaps anticipating he doesn't need to use the slipstream here to get the car on pole or to have a strong chance of getting the car on pole. And remember, having the slipstream is both a benefit, but it's also perhaps a little bit of a disadvantage. In fact, Sparks right now is finishing his tea, so I don't think we can see it, but in that cockpit right now, he is munching through something. I'm not sure if the rules and regulations allow our drivers to eat food whilst driving around on the circuit, so he's having to finish it in the car, in the pit lane right now. But we're going to focus on what's happening up front, as we can see that Luke Mitchell making his way through McPhillamy right now, and Martin Jallo9 trying to follow, and Gino just behind him. And as I was saying, that slipstream is both a benefit and also a bit of a curse, because when you go into sectors 2 and 3, having that dirty air causing additional understeer through corners such as the Dipper, but also going over Skyline before Dipper, that could cause you just to have to try and adjust the car, and it may cause the car to drift a little bit wider with the apex than you're used to. But watch here, for example, as we see that Martin and Gino make their way out of Forest Elbow here, and we've also got Nath in the rear of your picture, and they're all going to be picking up a distant tow from one another. That tow distance being 0.75 seconds, of course, and we see particularly that Gino is definitely in the slipstream of Martin and gaining considerably right now at this distance. But I think what Gino may also try and do is just back the car off a little bit as they come down into the braking zone for the chase, just so that way he simply gives himself some breathing room from Martin, and perhaps he feels that he can catch up to Martin over the course of that and put himself in that attacking position for the slipstream when he comes onto Conrod next time round. But speaking of coming around to start a fast lap, then it will be Luke Mitchell who's going to be the first driver to get us underway, and we jump on board with the British driver as he takes us around for a lap. So we did see this earlier, but now he's putting in his opening flying lap, and it'll be Luke Mitchell kicking us off and breaking into turn number 1. Braking at the 60-metre mark. They're braking a little bit more gently this time compared to what we saw in his warm-up lap. And as a result, as he goes up the hill now towards turn number 2, going up the mountain straight here, you can see revving the engine out as much as possible. Fuel not being a concern for these cars. They've only got qualifying fuel instead, the lightest they can possibly be, making his way over the timing line for sector 1. A 20.8 there being a very respectable time. Now coming into the braking zone for turn number 2. The right-hander, of course, going a little bit sideways there upon braking and having to use the downshift to third to get the car to rotate. You could see how he was about to understeer, and he immediately reacted to that, and perhaps needs to bring his braking zone forward just about 5 metres in order to stop that from happening next time as he goes through the cutting. And you can note how he's just missing the apex a little bit there. It's causing the car to go wide, but given our GT4 machines are quite underpowered compared to the GT3s that would race around here normally, that means we can greatly utilise the width of the circuit for little mistakes, and Mitchell knowing how to use the width of the circuit to his advantage as he starts to make his way through the triple header of left-handers here, culminating in McPhillamy, of course, and making his way through McPhillamy right now, running up onto the apex, the exit curve. They're not the apex curve, and getting it nicely settled before coming down through Skyline in towards the Dipper. As he goes into the left-hander here, you can see upshifted to third in midair, and it puts him in the wall, and Luke Mitchell will not be pleased with that, because that graze on the wall has cost him a significant amount of lap time. As we look a little bit further back to Martin Jallo9 right now, that's going to be a compromised lap from Mitchell, but I do think as well Martin has not had the best of of laps as he grazes the wall very gently coming out Forest Elbow, and we can see that Gino and Nath tripping over one another, particularly Nath in the rear of the slipstream of Gino right now, and you can see immediately Nath trying to go round Gino here as if to say to him, look mate, I'm coming through, you were a bit slow on your lap, let me go by. But of course both drivers on fast laps right now. This is not a battle for position, but they'll both feel they're battling for qualifying lap time. As we can see that Nath continued to stay on the outside. He'll put him on the inside going down into the chase chicane, but Gino braking later, and that's some brave stuff from Gino as the two of them are contesting the space non-stop. But we can see that Luke Mitchell right now making his way through a turn at 23. As we look back to Nath at Gino, and Nath is now back ahead of Gino with all the fighting between themselves. But I think both drivers will be going to the stewards to say, look, he tripped over me and vice versa. As Luke Mitchell sets a 2:12.0, that is the opening pace. Martin Janline with 2:14.1, Nath with 2:13.8, and Gino with 2:15.9. Nath, I think, will feel that he could have at least had 2 or 3 tenths more there, as Matthew Lambert sets a 2:16.0 for his opening qualifying lap, and Skyver jumps up to P2 with 2:13.5. I think a lot of drivers here missing out on their opening flying lap, and they've still got plenty of pace out there as DeCast now makes his way out the final corner. Was he going to be able to set the British driver? He makes his way across the line, and it is going to be a 2:15.4. A nice lap there by DeCast, and we can see that Sir Bertus has set a 2:27.3. That's not indicative of his pace, we reckon, and I think it's going to be the case that Sparks continues to finish whatever he's munching in the car right now. May only set 1 lap, if that, if he's able to get out on time. He's only got 4.5 minutes to go, so he hasn't got long left. He needs to give himself about 4.5 minutes to get the car out and get it round. We can see that Luke Mitchell right now making his way around the circuit and coming down towards McPhillamy, just cutting into that left-hander here, and this time trying to improve on the previous lap. Of course, remember, he made the mistake here coming into the dipper. As we stay with the third-person cameras, he's already 700ths up on his previous best. Will he hit the wall this time? No, he avoids making the upshift in mid-air, or the front right wheel was up in the air, and as a result, he gets a much smoother line here, and as he comes down to Forest Elbow, you'll note how he uses first gear to just briefly snap the car into the apex there. A very nice downshift to first, and then back up to second by Luke Mitchell. Not costing him any time, but giving him better retardation on the front of the car as he makes his way now down towards the end of Sector 3, and I suspect this is going to be at least half a second faster than his previous best as he comes across the timing line right now. It is 7 tenths up, a 1:40.2 at the end of Sector 3. This is looking very strong for the British driver as he makes his way down towards turn at 21, and we're going to wait and see what he's going to be able to achieve as we hear that Matthew Lambert has reset himself to the pits and just gone back out on circuit with 3.5 minutes to go. He will get 1 more lap in, and now Luke Mitchell are making his way down to the final corner here. What's he going to move the bar up to? I suspect we're looking at probably a 2:11.2, or perhaps even going into the high 2:10s, perhaps a 2:10.9. He comes across the timing line, and it is a 2:11.1. That is a huge improvement for the British driver, and he resets to the pit as he's got 3 minutes to go. And Martin Jallo 9 going off there, coming out of turn 22. We will take a look back at what happened as Gino improves to a 2:13.6. What about Skyver? Does he improve, given the fact he's currently provisional P2 and P1 overall in Division 1? He comes across the line, and it is an improvement to a 2:13.4. A very good improvement there as Gino also improves to a 2:13.6. So all of our drivers all putting in good lap times here, and it is the case that really everybody's got a little bit more pace to deploy, as Nath did not improve on that lap. He's given himself some clear space on track, so as a result he's got it all to do with 2 laps remaining. Martin Jallo 9, let's take a look back at what happened to the British driver. So as he made his way out of turn 22, he just put it on the grass, and the car ground along the inside wall there coming out of 22. It just snapped on the grass, and that's how Martin, and he just had to stay out of the way of everyone. And Martin, I think, will be kicking himself for that one. I'm thinking, right, I've only really got 1 or 2 more laps to go, and these tyres are now starting to show a little bit of wear, particularly that front right tyre is going to show a little bit of graining now after 2 flying laps around the circuit, as we do hear that we've had some improvements from some other drivers, and in particular we can see that DeCast, well, he didn't improve on that previous lap. What about Matthew Lambert? We reset to the pits, and he's currently on an out lap. Sir Bertus did improve to a 2:16.2, so he's finally set an indicative time, we believe, as Sparks has got out of the way there and actually got a bit of dirt on his tyres now. So I think Sparks is still getting himself warmed up. This will be only 1 lap that Sparks is going to be getting in, and he's going to make it a huge lap as he goes wide through turn 3 there. The dirt on his tyres from turn 2 still taking away the time and the ability to get the car around the circuit, but Sparks will bounce back, I'm sure, as we see DeCast has jumped to the pits. And that means DCast's qualified session has completed. He will not be able to get around to set another faster lap, and that is going to be a 2:15.4, which currently puts him P6, and that is effectively right now P5 in Division 1. We will wait and see if he does improve, of course, as we know that Martin Jallo 9 has jumped back to the pits as well, and Martin has ended his qualified session, and that means he has set a 2:14.1. It's not looking great for the British driver right now, although he is ahead of Matthew Lambert, of course, because Lambert has yet to set a qualifying lap beyond what his current one is, and we believe that was a botch lap of 2:16.0, but Lambert already going purple in Sector 1 compared to everybody else, so he just needs to hook up the lap, and I think he will jump the field and get himself up towards the head of the Division 1 grid, if not the head of the entire qualifying order, as he makes his way into the cut-in. Then we're going to stay focused on our Division 1 leader as it currently stands, and he makes his way now up through the double right-handers as Descriver improves to a 2:13.1. Descriver not able to challenge Luke Mitchell, but definitely raising the bar in terms of being up towards the front end of the Division 1 grid right now. And Descriver putting in a great showing in this final round so far in terms of qualifying, as we've only got half a minute to go before the klaxons sound, and that will be the end of the qualifying session. Everybody will be required to complete their current laps. We can see Lambert losing out a little bit in Sector 2, and in fact he must have made a mistake in Sector 3 or Sector 4, because he was only up by 200ths there come the end of Sector 2, so he made a mistake somewhere, and that's what cost him his lap as he makes his way into the Forest Elbow corner. And you can see they're just drifting the car downhill. He got it nice and collected, didn't use the snap down shift to first gear compared to Luke Mitchell, but had the car very collected. What's it going to be as he comes across the timing line here, as he is going to be the first of our drivers to complete their current flying lap, and indeed qualifying will conclude after all of our drivers have completed their current laps. He comes across the timeline for Sector 3, and he made a mistake at Forest Elbow. We can see he's almost 5 seconds up on his previous best, and right now that's going to put him in contention for a 2:11. He comes into the chase and goes through turns 21 and 22. Gino Demo returns to the pits. He's not able to improve anymore, so he's going to settle for his current lap, that 2:13. We'll wait and see whether that's good enough to put him on the second row of the Division 1 grid or the front row of it, depending on what Matthew Lambert says. He comes through the final corner. I think this is going to be a phenomenal lap from the British driver as he comes across the line. What's it going to be? It is going to be a 2:11.3, which puts him up to the front of the Division 1 grid, and Gino immediately will drop down to the second row as Nath is also in the pits as well. So neither driver will improve. Can Skyver improve at all right now? And Lambert only missing out on the overall pole lap by the best part of 0.2 of a second. So close between Lambert and Luke Mitchell, as we see that DCast has also retreated to the pits. So it's going to be Descriver who's currently improving from his current 2:13.1. And I think Descriver wants to raise the bar a little bit here to make sure he's on the front row of the grid with the Division 1 pack, i.e. alongside Matthew Lambert, and that will put him in a nice position for some solid points come the end of tonight. But we see he makes his way through the final corner. He's only got this corner to hook up as the qualified session is coming to its conclusion. Descriver comes across the line here, and it is going to be a 2:12.8. That is an impressive improvement by 0.3 of a second. Martin Jallo 9 currently on a flyer, but this looks like it's been an aborted lap given the fact he's just creeping around, and that time is an out lap. So Martin Jallo 9 not improving, and perhaps using this as just a lap to buy himself some time and perhaps sighting the circuit just a little bit more, as we see that Sir Bertus now coming down to the final corner. Can the Dutchman improve from a 2:16, perhaps getting to those 2:15s? He is right towards the rear of the pack right now in Division 1. As he comes across the line, he improves to a 2:14.6. That moves him ahead of DCast, but Sparks Fury coming across the line here, and it is a 2:11.2. Meaning Luke Mitchell takes pole in the Alien League and overall by 1.5 tenths ahead of Sparks. And then in terms of Division 1, it will be Matthew Lambert starting on pole, and alongside him will be Skyver. Lambert's championship rival of Martin Jallo 9 starting in P5 in Division 1, P7 overall in this qualifying session, and Martin will have the combination of Gino Demo and Nath between him, as we can see that Nath was 0.3 faster than Martin coming in that P4 for Division 1. The back of the Division 1 pack will be Sir Bertus and DCast, but we have got a grid which we didn't quite expect. We expected Martin to be up there with Matthew Lambert, but it does seem as though Matthew's already getting his campaign to conclude this season off to a flying start. He only needs to get the win, and indeed it's got to be the case that Martin needs to finish right behind him to keep the championship alive. As qualifying ends, Luke Mitchell takes pole, and it's time for race number 1 after we reset the grid. So keeping in mind, of course, that this start is not indicative of race 1 because we have to change the grid, albeit this actually does fit very well, given the fact this is how they would line up naturally. So I'm not sure if we're going to proceed with the race as it currently is, because this is the natural form. As we can see, all of our drivers getting ready to go. I'm not sure if we're going to get the reset. In fact, we are going to get the reset on terms of the grid there. As they all get underway, and Sparks is already spun by Luke Mitchell there. A little bit of cheekiness as all of our drivers decide to turn it into a mini demolition derby. And they back out immediately. So we're going to, as Matthew Lambert goes charging into the wall there. So all of our drivers deciding to have a little bit of fun. And we will be waiting for the grid to be reset. And then race number 1 will get underway. As we see, Sparks has crashed in terms of his game client has decided to brick. So he will need to get that reset and rejoin us within the next couple of minutes. But we should be getting underway within the next 2 to 3 minutes. And we're just hearing from Sir Bertus in particular, his comments regarding the circuit. To give you an idea, he's referring to it as an awful track, walls everywhere. It's like Monaco with kangaroos. I think that's got a good laugh from some of the drivers down in the paddock. Indeed, I like that. I think that's a brilliant comparison. That's how I feel about the circuit, in all honesty. And Sparks just rejoining right now. But all of our drivers now getting themselves set and ready to go, as we see Luke Mitchell just having a little bit of fun and getting a practice starting, in fact, for turn 1. Getting used to what grip levels will be available on those cold racing soft tyres. And that will be important, of course, because you will have the inside going into turn 1 versus Sparks 3. And he'll be starting on pole, but all of our drivers essentially line up side by side. So first and second line up alongside one another. But the odd numbers will start on the inside for turn 1, the evens on the outside. Now, where do you really want to be for turn 1? You ideally want to put your car as a minimum on the middle of the circuit, if not on the outside, because the width of turn 1 is deceptively tight. You think it's actually quite a wide corner going into turn 1, but because you've got a raised apex curve, effective, you end up putting the car up on the apex curve. As we see Luke Mitchell, they're getting a very nice run through the corner. It can actually lead to the car bouncing upwards and putting it off into the grass, alternatively spinning into the inside wall, as we do get the reset of the lobby there. So now we get to set the grid order, and we should be good to go within the next 2 minutes. And Lambert just making his way up the hill. And of course, some drivers will be using every second they've got available just to get a tiny bit more practice in and also get their head in the game. As we see, we're just waiting for Sir Bertus to ready up, and we're going to take a very quick sip of water as Sparks and Luke Mitchell are doing their practice starts. Well, I think Sparks is just showing off for the fans, doing some donuts and some drifts on the grid. And Luke Mitchell practicing his start there. As we see Sir Bertus make his way down, and Luke Mitchell instead deciding to kiss the tyre barrier there at the exit, or sorry, on the side of turn 1. You can see all of our drivers very itchy to get underway, just looking to go charging around the circuit right now. But here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. Race number 1 is about to get underway. Who's going to be the winner come the end of it? Let's find out. So as we pan down to the grid, it's Luke Mitchell on the right, Sparks here on the left-hand side. Behind them, Matthew Lambert and Describer. But what can Martin Jallo 9 achieve? But down in P7 on the grid, P5 for Division 1. It's lights out and away we go, and we can see that our top 4 drivers have all had a similar start. Nath bogging down a little bit in P5, they're dropping down the order. Sparks is immediately going to try and go around the outsider loop, but thinks better of it in the end as Matthew Lambert looks to the inside through 1. We can see that all of our drivers clustering up with Nath having that very difficult start, and Nath has dropped down to P6, but he's in a drag race now up the hill. All of our drivers, of course, will be trying to get into another slipstream as Nath has been overtaken by Deskyver, and they charge up the hill, and Gino, in fact, just jumped all the way up there to P4. He's got ahead of Deskyver, and we see coming down into turn number 2, Luke Mitchell and Sparks in that current order, and then we've got behind Sir Bertus trying to put some pressure on Martin, but in return under a bit of pressure from D-Casters, all of our drivers safely make their way through turn 2 and now up into the cut-in for the first time, asking, is anybody going to go wide and hit the marbles into turn 4? Nobody making any mistakes so far, and everybody keeping it in a good sequence here as they all run from nose to tail up through 5 and 6. Now this is the instance where nobody can really overtake and everybody has to settle into that racing order as we jump on board with Martin Jallow 9 here. You're riding with the British driver, currently P2 in Division 1, and he's trying to chase his way after the front of that Division 1 group. He's got Nath and Deskyver ahead of him as they make their way through McPhillamy here, and you could see that Deskyver's clipped the wall. Now as he makes his way onto the skyline, Nath backing out of it immediately, 9 that he was going to need to rejoin, and there wouldn't be much room to do so, but Deskyver already having a near miss with the wall there at McPhillamy, and you can see Sir Bertus almost clipping the back of Martin as they were making their way through the dipper, and now Luke Mitchell holding on to the lead for the time being as Lambert is getting himself nicely tucked into the slipstream there of Sparks, and I think Lambert's going to try and make a move. Alternatively, just use that to pull away and give himself the enough distance as Gino makes his way in P4 down towards the Conrad Straight and now going down towards the chase. Looking back up front, however, we can see that Lambert tucking in nice and tight behind Sparks here and not going for the move. I think he's just settling into this order right now. He's well with that slipstream range, but he's just keeping it cool and not decided to go for it. Meanwhile, Martin versus Sir Bertus. Sir Bertus goes to the inside versus Martin down into turn 21, and he's up the inside. Martin on the outside. He looks for the cutback, but he can't find it. Sir Bertus blocks off the way back in, and Martin drops to P8. Sir Bertus up into P7. But of course, we've still got 4 more laps to go after this one, and it could be the case that Sir Bertus finds himself under pressure very soon from Martin as Martin drifts his way into turn number 23, having a very difficult time there of the corner and now making his way onto lap number 2. So after 1 lap, it is Luke Mitchell ahead of Sparks Fury, followed by Matthew Lambert. Then it's a 1.6 second gap down to Gino Demmer leading the midfield, followed by Deskyver. Then it's Nath, followed by Sir Bertus, then Martin Jallow 9 and D-Cast in at P9. But as we look back up front, we can see Luke Mitchell is side by side with Sparks right now. Sparks getting the better run out of turn 1. Sparks is going to try and go around the outside into 2 here, but he's got to be brave on the brakes. But Luke Mitchell's the braver of the 2 with that inside line. He parks it on the apex and they make their way up towards 3 and 4 right now, as we can see no change from our top 3, albeit Lambert is hanging in there right now, being dropped a little bit through sector 4, but as they make their way up into the cutting, you could see no change for the 3 of them as Gino is pulling away from Deskyver. 1.2 seconds is the gap as Nath goes a little bit deep under braking, and also Sir Bertus going massively deep under braking there through the cutting, and as a result of that, as he now goes through the double right hand section here, we can see that Sir Bertus under huge pressure from Martin Jallow 9, but the problem is it's so difficult to overtake here as Martin's finding out right now. He goes as wide as possible through turn number 7 and 8, but you can see Sir Bertus clipping the wall, but Martin has to back out of it because it would be too dangerous to go for the move into, oh, we've got yellow flags ahead as we see that Nath has had a dramatic spin and rejoined side by side with Martin Jallow 9 there. Martin's just able to get past Nath. That was near fatal for Martin versus Nath as Nath comes down through the dipper there. What on earth happened to the British driver? We'll find out shortly for you, but meanwhile we need to focus back up front as we see that Luke Mitchell is under pressure from Sparks right now, and Sparks looking the closest he has been as Matthew Lambert has been dropped. I think Lambert's actually clipped the wall somewhere in the downhill run through sector 3, as we note that Sparks putting some pressure on Luke Mitchell here, but decided not to go for it right now as they make their way down to the braking zone of the chase here, and you can see there is no attempt at an overtake. He looks around the outside, Mitchell defends to the inside, but he's just keeping it cool and putting the leader under pressure. As we look further back, we can see Sir Bertus versus Jallow 9, and it was the case last time that Bertus was the one on the attack. Martin this time's on the attack, and he goes deep through 20 to 21 and knocks Martin wide out of 22, and as the British driver rejoins on the circuit, he just misses the outside wall there, and it's Sir Bertus who holds on right now as all 4 drivers concertina together, and we've also got a yellow flag ahead. It's all kicking off, my goodness. And Sparks, what has happened to our P2 driver? As we see, he rejoins and that's 5 wide down on the start-finish straight here, and we see that Sir Bertus at the head of this. D-Cast got in the mix there, and it's up into P6, and Sir Bertus has managed to navigate his way through all this as Sparks pulls off the circuit, drops off in fact, and I think it's the case that the dirt on the tyres there, and perhaps a bit of damage to the car, it's just simply upset his rhythm, as we can see that Nath right now has fallen to the back of this pack, and Martin in P7, he'll feel aggrieved that Sir Bertus knocked him a little bit wide out of turn 22, and as a result of that, D-Cast is now up into P6, and Sir Bertus holding on to lead this pack as D-Cast goes for a lunge into turn 2, and Martin follows suit there. All of our drivers being caught out by the dirty air, and as a result of that, Nath has just made a 3-for-1 pass, and it's up into P5. My goodness, Nath recovering right now, but this is too dramatic to call between the 4 drivers, as we see Sir Bertus has started to drop Sparks. In fact, Sparks is navigating his way through all this as Martin is really struggling to get that car back up to speed right now. We can see that D-Cast is behind him, but I think both Martin and D-Cast there were really caught out of everything that kicked off. Particularly Martin, he just seemed to follow the drivers ahead of him off into the wall at turn 2 when it didn't need to happen, but that's the dirty air for you, as we can see now that Sir Bertus goes wide out of McPhillamy, but rejoins the circuit, and Sparks coming up quick behind, has to stamp on the brakes immediately to avoid hitting the rear of the car, and we can see behind Martin and D-Cast into the wall there before getting into the dipper, and he spins at the dipper. D-Cast, the yellow flags are out. That is absolutely disastrous for the British driver, as Nath just simply pulls away from all the drama behind him. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Luke Mitchell was 1.6 seconds ahead of Matthew Lambert. Lambert closing down the race leader. Gino in a comfortable P3, he's got a second over to Skyver, but we now look back to Nath in P5, and we can see Sparks behind him in P6, and then it's Sir Bertus in P7, and Martin tracing down Sir Bertus now after all is said and done. I think Sir Bertus went a bit wide at Forest Elba, I'm being told in my ear, and as a result, that's how Sparks has got past him. But really, it was all kicking off there in short order on lap number 3, and I expect with 2 laps to go, we can see even more drama on the horizon, as I think that was Martin going wide there. In fact, he does drift wide at turn 21, as a result, cuts turn 22, but rejoins on the circuit, having lost a bit of time to Sir Bertus. Hunting down the Dutchman is the Brit, but he'll need to do it within the next 2 laps. We can see our leaders right now to lap number 4, and they've got 1.2 seconds separating them as Gino is being reeled in very gradually by Deskyver here. Deskyver only shy by 300ths of that slipstream zone as they're charging up towards the right-hander of turn 2 here, and it'll be the case if Deskyver can keep this pressure up, he'll be within striking distance coming down the Conrod Straight. Behind them, Nathan in a world of his own, 8 seconds down on the battle for P3, but he's 2 seconds ahead of Sparks, who's gradually reading them in, and Sir Bertus and Martin separated by a second right now. And with that all calming down for a moment, let's take a look at what happened with Sparks. So we're going to see here that Sparks makes his way to turn 23, and I suspect he goes wide here out onto the grass as he gets on the throttle, and the car just simply goes up on the curb and it goes into the wall, and that is why we had the yellow flags out. And then after that, well, the rest is history in terms of it all kicking off. What is Sparks then getting in the mix as Sir Bertus almost mimicked him, in fact, and went sideways there and actually clipped the driver on his inside, which I believe at the time was Martin Jallo 9. But as a result of that, that's how it all kicked off, as we see Mitchell having a bit of difficulty through the dipper there. In fact, so much of a difficulty that Matthew Lambert is going to be within his slipstream if he gets Forest Elbow right, and we can see that Mitchell is struggling a little bit for tyre grip right now as they make their way out of Forest Elbow, and Matthew Lambert's just not quite close enough to be in the tow immediately, but he will be there when they come across the timing line for the end of Sector 3, going on to Sector 4, as we see Mitchell weaving a little bit to try and break the initial tow, but Lambert is now going to be in that tow once they get over the hill here. He now gets into the tow and he'll start to gain. Behind, Gino ahead of Deskyver chasing him, but has dropped 4 attempts over this lap so far, and then behind them we can see that Nath has had a mistake somewhere, or in fact no, my apologies, he's been reeled in by Sparks. Sparks reeling in him arm over fist, as we see the 2 British drivers will be coming to blows shortly, and I think Sparks will be looking for a routine pass down into turn 21. He'll look to go to the inside with the overspeed, he does, but Sparks goes onto the grass and just catches the car in time. Sparks having a bit of difficulty getting his head in this one by the looks of things, but you can see he's made the pass, although he's rally crossed it, and as a result Nath has the momentum to come back in. The 2 drives side by side down into turn 23, and Nath on the inside here, Sparks on the outside, but Nath braking very early for the corner, way too early for the corner, and letting Sparks back through there. But I think Nath might realise, you know what, I don't need to be fighting him. And behind, Sir Bertus and Martin again coming to blows, as we see that Martin is now only 0.6 of a second down, 7 tenths in fact, as they go on to their final lap. Indeed, all drives will complete a 5th lap, as we see D-Cast coming across the line as well. But meanwhile, up front, Luke Mitchell into the wall there, so that we just called out at the right time. I'm not sure what's happened to the British driver, but Lambert is now up into the lead as a result. And I think it is the case that if Lambert was to finish where he is now, as would be Martin, it would be the case that it would be Division 1 wrapped up, and it would go to Matthew Lambert as it currently stands. And we're going to take a look back at what happened to Luke Mitchell. I think he just missed his braking point, as we're going to see that Lambert, we're going to jump on board with the British driver. And I think Luke Mitchell went defensive initially, and Lambert looked to the outside here, essentially forcing Luke onto a tight line. And in the braking battle here, yep, Luke just missed his braking point. He tried to brake deeper, but it was the case that in the end that Matthew was just able to pull it off by being sensible and taking the standard braking point, and Luke Mitchell outbroke himself in the defence. But we can see Gino under pressure right now from Describer. The battle for P3 is going to come down to the final lap here. Which of the two of them is going to take home second place and third place in the Division 1 race? Of course, they would love to both be on the overall podium for this race. Neither of them, I believe, have seen the overall podium over the majority of the races. In fact, if over all the races, I don't think either of them have been on the overall podium at all, where the majority of the Alien League drivers been there in the earlier instances of this season. But we can see that Gino right now is being gradually reeled in by Describer. The gap very small between the two of them as we look on board and we look back from Gino's car. Describer looking for the move here, but Gino puts his car dead centre of the circuit, making himself as wide as possible, and Describer can't find a way through. They're going to the braking zone, of course, and there's no way through. And I think it will be the case that Gino's going to hold on, but as he comes out of the final corner, the win overall and the win for Division 1 in race number 1 will go to Matthew Lambert, 1.5 seconds clear of Luke Mitchell, who brings home the win for the Alien League, second place overall. And Gino holds on in the end for third place, and that's second place in Division 1. Describer behind him in fourth, that's third place in Division 1. And then Sparks coming home in fifth. It's been a difficult one for Sparks as he comes across the line. Nave holds on in the end to P6 by 5 seconds over Martin Jallo 9, who has got past Sir Bertus. I believe that's happened in down towards the chase, but Martin coming home P7, Sir Bertus in P8, and then it will be Decast bringing it home in P9 and bringing our order across the line at the very end of the order as he comes across the finish line then to complete race number 1. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but of course to our race winner, Matthew Lambert from the United Kingdom. What a brilliant first race of this evening. And here are your race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. Matthew Lambert bringing home the overall win, only 1.4 seconds clear of Luke Mitchell. Of course, Luke Mitchell coming in second, and Gino rounding off our podium there in P3. Our top 5 being concluded with Describer and Sparks Theory. Breaking that down into the splits, Division 1, Matthew Lambert coming first, Gino Demmer in second, Describer in third, and for the Alien League, Luke Mitchell ahead of Sparks Theory. We can see that the fastest lap went to Sparks on lap number 5 at 2:11.014, almost in parallel with the, well, in fact, faster than the pole lap we saw in qualifying. But I believe there may have been a little bit of slipstream involved in that, although don't quote me on that, as we're about to get ready for the full-up race, which will be 15 minutes in length. We've got a slightly longer race for the finale in race number 2. And that is our order, as we will be getting the reverse grid in. And we are hearing that Luke Mitchell did in fact miss his braking point in that battle with Matthew Lambert at the end there. And that's how Lambert was able to get the lead in that battle side by side into turn 2. But that is the case as a result, ladies and gentlemen. I can confirm with that result, subject to any stewards' inquiries, but I don't think there will be any in this instance, that Matthew Lambert, as of that race, is your Division 1 champion. So now the big questions that remain will be with respect to who rounds off P3 in Division 1. As we're just hearing in our Twitch chat right now from Luke Mitchell, there's cock-ups, and then there's mistaken a shadow for a lay-by, so that explains what happened at turn 2 versus Lambert. And then from Sparks, he got curved coming out of the final corner, and then literally in the way of the entire population of Australia. In fact, yeah, he was right in the way of everybody as they came out of the corner. That was some dramatic stuff and some brown trousers moments, but still, he made it out, and in fact, everybody was able to navigate the carnage there and make it around okay. We're waiting for the grid to be set right now. And in the meantime, we're just waiting for that grid to be set up. Lambert is back in the car right now. And I can tell you, with respect to the battle for P3 in Division 1, that based on that result, Descriver will have inched closer to Sir Bertus, and I think he still needs to finish a couple of places ahead of Sir Bertus to potentially swipe P3 off. But Sir Bertus will still be in a comfortable position, and Descriver will definitely have got ahead of Dcast for P4, given the fact that Descriver finished well ahead of Dcast in the first race. We are just waiting for the countdown right now. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Race number 2 is coming at you. 15 minutes. Who's going to be the winner come the end of it? Let's find out. So as we pan down to the grid, once again, on the right is Sparks, on the left-hand side is Luke Mitchell. Behind them, Dcast and Sir Bertus at the front of our Division 1 pack. Will Martin Jallo 9 be able to hold on to third place in Division 1 in this race? Let's see. It's lights out and away we go. All of our drivers getting a reasonable start, though. Dcast getting a lot of wheel spin, and Martin immediately going on the offensive as Sparks looks to the inside versus Luke Mitchell down to turn 1, and he gets caught around the outside by Luke Mitchell. As we can see, Martin up into P4, getting a very strong start is the British driver, making amends for what happened in race number 1 and looking to go fighting. He's immediately on the attack versus Sir Bertus as the Dutchman holds onto the racing line. Sparks decides to weave a little bit there to get heated his tyres. They all come down to the braking zone for turn number 2 then. Martin tucks back in, and we can see behind them, with that, Martin looks at the inside of Sir Bertus into the corner. He's got himself alongside, and I think this is going to be a daring move, as we can see that Sir Bertus is still there on the inside into turn 3. They're going to have to negotiate this because they're coming into the tight cutting now, and it will be the case that Martin goes a bit wide into the wall there as he recovers the car. Dcast into the wall as well. He clips the wall and causes a traffic jam, and Martin and Sir Bertus are still side by side, and Martin gets caught on the curb at turn 5. That is disastrous for the British driver. That would have been an incredible series of moves for the overtake there, but Martin now drops all the way down the order as Sir Bertus breaks away, and we can see that Dcast, after clipping the water cutting in P5 right now, he's got a whole traffic jam of cars behind him, as we are seeing that everybody's trying to find a way through, and Descriver looks to the inside, but he can't get his nose in there over Skyline, and that would be a very dangerous place to overtake right now, as we see that Dcast is really enabling the front four to just break away, and in return we've got a huge traffic jam. Matthew Lambert right in the mix there, trying to find his way into the mix as they go into Forest Elbow here, and surely Matthew must be thinking, right, just wait until you get the speed down the Conrod straight and get past Descriver and go hunting after Dcast, as we do see that we've got Martin. He's rejoined the pack. He's 2.9 seconds down right now on the rest of the field, but he'll catch up in short time, as we know that Sir Bertus is going side by side with Nath as they come down into turn 20, and then into the chase they go. Nath has got the overspeed, of course, into the braking zone. Sir Bertus holds it on the inside. He loves to brake late, does the Dutchman, and he holds on for the time being at the head of the Division 1 pack. Nath will have to try and find another way round, as we see behind Dcast is still in P5. Behind them, Lambert has got past the P6 under braking into the chase, and we know that Descriver under pressure from Gino. Gino on the inside into turn 23, and Descriver turns in, but he finds a face full of Gino there, and as a result, Gino now up into P7. So after lap number 1, it is Sparks who goes wide out of turn 1, followed by Luke Mitchell, who's 2 seconds down. A further 2.8 seconds to Sir Bertus, who's got Nath all over the back of him. Then Dcast in P5, Matthew Lambert in P6, Gino in P7, Descriver in P8, and then Martin Jallo 9 recovering right now in P9, as we see making their way up towards the turn number 2 once again. And they go, and Sparks Fury just simply making his way in, and Sir Bertus side by side with Nath as they go into the braking zone here. Sir Bertus defending, remember, versus Nath. Nath goes a little bit deep, is able to maintain enough momentum there. That is some bold stuff from the British driver as he makes his way through, and behind them we can see a similar situation where Dcast has been overtaken around the outside by Lambert going into 2, and then Gino in P7 right now having to hold off Descriver. It is all coming to blows between all the Division 1 drivers. You'll love to see it as we see Lambert now charging after P4 and P3 and reeling them in arm over fist as we look back to Descriver right now. And of course, riding with the British driver, you do have to wonder, what has he got planned for Gino right now? He knows he can fight his way back. Gino's not too much faster in terms of pace. They're pretty much even, as we do see a car has gone off at McPhillamy there. I'm not sure who that is. I think that's Sir Bertus. He rejoins, and he's now going to have all the drivers behind from D-Cast backwards all trying to catch up to him. He's dirt on the tyres, means he completely misses his braking point for the dip, of the car slides into the wall, and now he's going to be at the head of a traffic train with D-Cast followed by Gino and then Descriver all wanting to get past as the dirt is still on the tyres. He's drifting, and D-Cast gets a load of understeer from the dirty air of Sir Bertus, meaning that Gino jumps up to P6, and Gino here could get 2 places down the straight, as we can see that Descriver behind is side by side with D-Cast. They make their way down the straight, down Conrad now, and they've got a long way to go to the chase, as we note that Gino versus Bertus, they're side by side here. Gino's got a little bit of an overspeed as Descriver looks to the same, but D-Cast says no, and it's going to be the case that Gino has got ahead in turn 20 as they go into the braking zone. Sir Bertus looks to brake late, but it's the case that Gino has got his number and is up into P5 right now, but these 4 all trading places. Sir Bertus is coming back. The Dutchman wants the position back as much as he can, and he goes to the inside of Gino into turn 23. They go into left-hander here. Gino respects the phase on the inside, and we can see that D-Cast wants to get his nose into the mix here. It's all kicking off as all 4 drivers are trying to take P5, and Sir Bertus at the head of this little pack of cars as we see D-Cast looks to the inside into turn 1. He's going to have the inside, but he'll lose the momentum unless he can get himself into the slipstream of Sir Bertus, but Gino is there on the right-hand side, but as Gino is pulled onto the outside line, you can see that Sir Bertus is now moving back onto the racing line for turn 2, and D-Cast gets a little bit of a tow. And he's also got behind him, as we hear that Matthew Lambert has moved up to P3. We'll look at that shortly. We can see that D-Cast versus Gino. They're going to turn 2, and it's Gino on the inside. D-Cast on the outside. D-Cast goes onto the marbles, and now he's got Descriver up his inside. And we can see that Descriver trying to go the long way round, and he's got it done before turn 3. So D-Cast backing out of it, being sensible there, and realising he's not going to get it done into the cut-in this time around. He's still got 2 laps to go. Meanwhile, Lambert is now up into P3, and let's take a look back at how that happened. So I think this was a standard move up into turn 2. You'll see that Nath is on the racing line here. Lambert's got the overspeed, and does he just simply pull out and use the slipstream to his advantage? He does, and I don't think Nath is going to fight this too hard in the fact that they've got quite a gap to the guys behind, and you can see here that Lambert has the overspeed. Nath brakes a little bit earlier as well. Lambert having the brakes and just getting it done through turn 2. But as we look further back right now, we can see that Sir Bertus is at the head of this pack of furious BMWs. He drifts his way into the dipper, and you can see that Gino, Descriver, D-Cast, they're all behind him. They all want the position back. You're riding on board with the Dutchman right now, who's doing everything he can, but he goes deep into Forest Elbow. Gino tries to get his head alongside, and D-Cast into the wall at Forest Elbow, and that has put him all the way down the order, as we can see that Martin Jallo 9 is there as well. Gino goes out to the grass there, a little bit of snap steer. I'm not sure what's happened there. It's all kicking off once again, and Sir Bertus has got a nice bit of space, but I'm really not sure what happened to Gino. But what I can tell you is that that's all mistake. Descriver now is within striking distance of the British driver as Gino makes his way, and will Descriver go for the move? Well, Gino's defending to the inside, covering off Descriver's potential attempt at an overtake. Descriver looks at the cutback here. He's got a huge amount of momentum, in fact, through turn 22. He may have the move on here for turn 23, and this will enable Sir Bertus to pull away, as Gino definitely defends the inside for the purposes of turn number 23. And you could see as they make their way through the corner, we've still got 8 minutes remaining. In fact, folks, we've still got the best part of at least 4 more laps to go here, if my memory serves me correctly. But you know that Gino really trying to hold on to places, and Descriver just not able to outbrake him into the corners. That's where Gino seems to be the stronger of the two. He just has the confidence on the brakes. Might be running a bit more bias towards the front compared to Descriver, but that's going to take some life out of those tyres, particularly the front right-hand tyre in turn 1. As they make their way charging up towards turn 2 once again for the full time of asking. Gino going defensive early on, essentially getting the message through to Descriver here. It's not going to happen. And behind Martin up the inside of D-Cast, he's got the overspeed, and Martin making a nice classic move there through turn 2 as we see D-Cast clipping too much curb, and as a result going a little bit sideways through turn 2, and Gino up into P6 still, and he's still holding on to it. He's doing his best to hold off Descriver, trying to make that BMW as wide as possible, or make Descriver have to go the long way round and put himself at risk risk of going into the wall as they make their way through 5 and 6 now and into the left-hand sequence of 7 through to 10 that culminates in McPhillamy. But they're up front, meanwhile, Luke Mitchell under pressure still from Sparks Fury. Luke ahead of Sparks at this point in the race, but you can see that Sparks is there behind only half a second, and Mitchell is definitely struggling with the front end of that car through the dip. But Lambert has broken away from Nave. 3 seconds is the gap between our Division 1 leader and the second place man in Division 1 on circuit, as we see Sir Bertus at the head of the column doing everything he can to hold off the pack of Division 1 drivers behind him. And we can see that he's going all sorts of wrong. I think he's had a mistake through the dipper once again, and he finds himself under a huge amount of pressure here from Gino, and Skyver's also there, as we see that Martin went a little bit deep into the wall for his elbow, or just grazed the wall. But looking back to that battle for P5, we can see that Gino trying to find his way around, going a little bit onto the dirt there, and he's going to go side by side versus Bertus. And don't forget about Skyver. He'll want to get into the mix here. They're side by side into the braking zone. Will they make it 3 wide? I don't think you can get 3 wide into turn 21, but they'll try it nonetheless, as Sir Bertus looks on the inside. He brakes as late as possible, and there's contact, and that sends both cars wide. And Skyver with the double move. What a brilliant piece of strategic play there. Skyver letting the 2 drivers up front take one another out, and we can see that Sir Bertus and Gino still not giving up the fight. Well, particularly the Dutchman wants to be on that inside, but Gino just at the end says, right, you know what, I'm going to shut the door on you. I'll go a little bit wide, but I've got the door shut. I'm back into P6, and Gino is holding on, as Sir Bertus right now will look to try and come out, and Martin is just behind these guys, as is DCAR right now. But let's take a look back at what happened with Skyver there. A classic piece of strategic overtaking. So you're riding on board here with Skyver, and what you're going to see, he knows that Sir Bertus and Gino are going to battle for the chase. So as a result, he decides not to get himself in there, and he expects that Sir Bertus is going to go for a late break, which he does, and you'll see that Sir Bertus just knocks Gino wide here, and Skyver says, you know what, thank you, I'll just take for the 2-for-1 Australian special, and he gets away with it and moves up to P5. Brilliant piece of work there by the British driver, as we see Sir Bertus now falling down the order a little bit as he's under pressure from Martin and D-Cast. I think the wheels are starting to come off the wagon a little bit for the Dutchman as he makes his way to the dipper, and the cutting, and Martin there getting caught out with a little bit of dirt on the tyres, and there was some contact between himself and D-Cast, and I think there D-Cast will feel that Martin making that mistake warranted him the space, but Martin will feel that D-Cast inherited a position by pushing his way past. I think the two of them might have a little word in the paddock afterwards, but you can see that D-Cast right now up into P8, and Martin will try and get his way back. He will at least want to finish 1 position higher than the back of the field to wrap up this season, as we can see that Martin really putting the pressure on D-Cast and just having those little gremlins, those little mistakes which are getting in his way for Martin as they make their way through the dipper. And you could see that D-Cast really struggling through the dipper, and Martin gets side by side. This is going to be very spicy indeed as they go to Forest Elbow, but he backs out 9. There's only room for 1, and instead he'll wait to attack on the Conrad as he clips the wall, does Martin, and that's going to cost him all the momentum he had as he chases him down, but he's going to fall out the slipstream most likely as they go up the hill. Now, meanwhile, up front, what I can tell you is that Luke Mitchell is still leading by 0.6 of a second ahead of Sparks as they make their way out of 23 and come onto lap number 6. They've still got the best part of at least 2 more laps to go, as we can see they come across the timing line. And meanwhile, Lambert has now broken a 7-second gap on Nave. He's just pulling away, and Nave going very sideways out of 23 there. Perhaps Nave's starting to feel a little bit of tiredness kicking in. Perhaps the tyres are just starting to hit a bit of a cliff, and as a result, under pressure now to bring the car home. He's got a 6-second gap from Skyver, mind you, so he doesn't need to do anything magical, as Gino has definitely broken away from Sir Bertus for the time being. He's 1.4 seconds up, but remember, Gino could see that gap come down towards the end if he doesn't keep it consistent, and consistency has been the biggest challenge for a lot of drivers over the course of the races this season, as we see that Martin has retired the car, and unfortunately Martin will not be able to participate in the rest of this race. Technical issues most likely with the car, but as a result we're now down to 8 drivers remaining, and we can see that Sir Bertus chasing after Gino, and I think it will be the case that D-Cast behind him will also want to get back into the mix, because remember, these drivers are under threat of losing positions in the Division 1 Championship to Skyver, who right now is in P5, and I think in particular it will be D-Cast, though Sir Bertus should be just about safe based on the current order. I think it will be very close between the two of them as we look back up front, and we can see that Skyver in that P3 position right now for the Division 1 and doing a very good job of just keeping it safe and sensible. Now our field has opened up a little bit here as Gino is being gradually reeled back in by Sir Bertus. The gap going onto this lap was 1.4 seconds, but we can see a yellow flag ahead in Sector 2. It's at McPhillamy, and I think that's going to be, was it Skyver having a run off there? I'm not 100% sure, but somebody has had a little bit of a disaster through there, and we can see that Nath has dropped the gap down to 11.7 seconds versus Matthew Lambert. So I think it might have been Nath who made the mistake. Let's find out. So we're watching Nath back right now as he makes his way into McPhillamy very shortly. That's turn 9 where he launched up onto the curb, and then we see he makes his way through McPhillamy here. Does he go wide onto the gravel? He does indeed. That's what triggered the yellow flag. In fact, he got curbed, and the car, fortunately for him, did a 720 spin and also a 360 spin, and Nath very, very lucky to get away with that. That could have been close to tears there for the British driver. He won't want that to happen a second time, because that's cut his gap to Describer from 6 seconds down to 3.8 seconds. And you could see that Nath already trying to overdrive a little bit in order to get that gap back up, but he doesn't need to, as Sir Bertus being hunted by Decast right now. The Dutchman in a battle with Decast for P7, and I think he'll want to fight a little bit first. Bertus goes off the circuit there at turn 22, just understeering a little bit, and Decast up into P7 right now as the British driver. And what can Sir Bertus do to get back in the mix come the next lap, with only one more lap to go for these drivers, as we see that Sparks is battling with Luke Mitchell now. The battle commences, and he's looking to the outside at turn 2, but Mitchell defends well to the inside, nailing his braking point this time compared to the end of race 1. And we look there as they go up towards up towards the cutting right now, and we can see that Luke Mitchell is holding on, and he wants to try and drop Sparks before they get onto Conrad, because that's where Sparks will come back, and he'll have 2 more overtaking opportunities, going into the chase and also at turn 23 to see if he can sneak the win off of Luke Mitchell in this one. As we look further back, and we can see that Nath really struggling right now. The tyres really starting to just, well, they've only got a little bit of grain on, but Nath really not having a lot of comfort in the car. And in fact, that gap between himself and Describer has come down again from turn 2. I hear that Nath went off there, but meanwhile behind, we can see that Decast going into the wall, coming out of the cutting, and Sir Bertus picking up a half-second penalty at the cutting. Well, I've never seen that before. That's some magical cutting work there, as we can see that he's all over the back of Decast right now. And meanwhile up front, as these guys are making their way into McPhillamy very shortly, although Decast hitting the wall there, and Sir Bertus taking too much curve as well. Neither driver getting it good. We can see that Luke Mitchell under attack here from Sparks. Sparks getting the better run out of Forrest's elbow, plus the slipstream. They're going to go side by side down into the chase, but Sparks has already got himself set up for the inside into the chase. He'll be on the outside of turn 20, and Luke will have to give him the space now, given the fact that Sparks is down the inside as they make their way then into turn 21. About on the brakes, Mitchell going a little bit late on the brakes versus Sparks, but you can see that Sparks is still there. Mitchell going onto the dirt, but he's just about held off his opponent as they make their way down towards turn 23. One more chance for Sparks. Can he find a way through? He does. A little feint to the inside, but he isn't able to put Luke Mitchell off, as Luke will just park it on the apex and accelerate out. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, Luke Mitchell will come home to win race number 2 ahead of Sparks, and it'll be Matthew Lambert who wins the race for Division 1, coming home in P3 overall. And Nath, he's got a lot of pressure over Describer here. I think he's made a mistake somewhere as they come down to turn 23. He's going to defend to the inside. Can he hold on to P4 and P2 for Division 1? Will Describer look to the cutback? They're side by side here as they're coming towards the timing line. Who's going to be the one who brings it home? And it is going to be Describer, who just comes home ahead of Nath, and it'll be Gino in P6. Decast holding on to P7 in the end, and Sir Bertus bringing it home in P8. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but to our race winner, Luke Mitchell from the United Kingdom. What a cracking race number 2, and what a race to end round number 10 and also season 20 of the BMW M4 Sunday League for Next Gen Racing. Here are your race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. Luke Mitchell picking up the overall win ahead of Sparks Fury by only 3.5 tenths of a second, and Matthew Lambert a further 2.5 tenths down the road. Describer in P4 and Nath rounding off our top 5 there in P5. As for breaking it down into the divisions, Luke Mitchell ahead of Sparks in the Alien League, and for Division 1, Matthew Lambert bringing home the win there and definitely cementing his win of the Division 1 Championship. Congratulations to Matthew Lambert, and once again congratulations to Sparks for the Alien League win, which was already certified going into this round, of course. Describer there in P2 for Division 1 and Nath in P3, and I think that means that Describer has jumped Decast for P4 in Division 1, but I don't think he's done enough to jump Sir Bertus, but it's going to be very close between the two. We'll wait for the official confirmation following tonight's racing. Matthew Lambert in that race setting the fastest lap on lap 4, the fastest lap we've seen all evening, a 2:10.869. But what a brilliant season. Congratulations to our champions of Sparks and Matthew Lambert. And really, well, that just leaves one thing left to say. What a season, ladies and gentlemen. It's had highs, it's had lows, it's had drama, it's had blows, and indeed it has been constantly under pressure all the way through in all 10 rounds. It's been fantastic racing. Well done to all of our drivers. Season 20 has been a blast, and we look forward to what Season 21 holds for the GT Sport Next Gen FASTR BMW M4 League. Well, we'll wait to see it when it's announced. But I've been your host for this season in the top split, Paul TX141 Walsh or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And well, it's time to say farewell to Season 20 as we bring the curtains down on it. Until next time, of course, stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night, and thank you for tuning in.